I still remember the look on her face that morning, half disbelief, half amusement. She stood in the doorway, arms folded, lips curled into that teasing smirk she always wore when she thought she had the upper hand. "You forgot, didn't you?" she said, shaking her head as if it were something typical of me. I tried to smile, to play along, but inside, something stung. I'd been counting down to this day for months, not because of the date itself, but because of what it meant to me, what I'd been building in secret. But I didn't say a word. I let her think I had forgotten. Maybe part of me wanted her to. The morning went on quietly. She busied herself around the house, muttering under her breath about how some men just don't care about anniversaries. Every time she sighed, it felt like a jab straight through my chest. I had to bite my tongue not to ruin the surprise. I wanted to tell her, to remind her that I wasn't careless or distant. But I also knew that if I did, the meaning behind everything I'd done would lose its weight. So I watched her laugh at my supposed forgetfulness, each little joke carving a small wound in silence. By noon, she'd stopped talking to me altogether. She'd sent a few texts to her friends, probably venting about how her husband was too distracted to remember what day it was. I caught a glimpse of her screen when she walked past, words like typical and men never change. My heart sank a little deeper, but I stayed calm. I made her lunch, just like I always did, placed it on the table, and left without a word. Her eyes followed me for a moment, confused, maybe even slightly guilty, but she didn't say anything either. I spent the afternoon finalizing everything I had planned. The phone calls, the timing, the little details I'd been hiding for weeks, all of it had to align perfectly. I'd even taken the day off from work, something she hadn't noticed because she was too busy assuming the worst. I double-checked the ring in my pocket, a new one, engraved with a phrase that only she and I would understand. It wasn't expensive, but it carried something deeper, the memory of where we started, the promise we once whispered to each other when we had nothing but dreams. As the evening sun began to fade, she dressed up without saying much. I could tell she was hurt, though she tried to hide it behind a mask of indifference. She probably thought I'd forgotten again, that I had no dinner plans, no flowers, no message. When I told her to get in the car, she looked at me like she didn't know whether to be annoyed or amused. "Oh, so now you remember?" she asked. I just smiled, starting the engine without answering. I didn't want to spoil what was coming. I wanted the truth to unfold naturally, slowly, beautifully, painfully. The drive was quiet. She stared out the window while I drove through familiar streets that soon gave way to a narrow road lined with old trees. It was the place where we first met, that small lakeside cafe, the one that had closed years ago. Except tonight, it wasn't closed. I'd rented the space for one evening, had it decorated with lights, candles, and the faint sound of our favorite song playing through a speaker hidden behind the trees. When we arrived, her expression shifted. The teasing smirk was gone, replaced by a look of pure disbelief. She stepped out of the car slowly, as if unsure whether to trust what she was seeing. The soft glow of the lanterns reflected in her eyes. She covered her mouth, whispering my name as if afraid it might all disappear if she spoke too loud. I didn't say anything at first. I just watched her take it in, the old sign restored, the table set for two, the same song that had played the night I asked her to be mine. Everything around us seemed to freeze, even the air felt still, waiting for her reaction. Finally, I walked over to her, holding the small box I'd kept hidden all day. "You thought I forgot," I said quietly. But I didn't forget. I was remembering every single thing that brought us here. She looked at me, her eyes soft now, guilt swimming just beneath the surface. "I'm sorry," she whispered, her voice trembling. "I shouldn't have said those things." I smiled faintly, opening the box to reveal the new ring. "You once told me," I said, "that love isn't about big gestures, it's about remembering why you chose each other in the first place. So I wanted to bring us back to where that choice began." Tears welled in her eyes as I slipped the ring onto her finger. She didn't try to hide them anymore. The same woman who had spent the morning mocking me now stood speechless, shaking her head as if she couldn't believe how wrong she'd been. "You did all this, for me?" she asked. "No," I said softly, for us. I pulled her into my arms, and for the first time in months, she held me tightly without reservation. The silence between us wasn't heavy anymore, it was peaceful, full of everything we'd left unsaid. Dinner passed slowly, beautifully. We laughed about old memories, shared small stories we'd forgotten to tell each other, and for a while, it felt like time itself had turned back. The wind carried the scent of jasmine from the lake, and the lights reflected off the water like 1,000 tiny stars. When the song changed to the one we danced to at our wedding, she stood up, took my hand, and whispered, "Dance with me." So we did, barefoot, clumsy, laughing through the tears that kept sneaking into our smiles. As the night drew to a close, we sat by the lake in silence, watching the faint ripples move across the water. She leaned her head on my shoulder and said, "I don't deserve this." I looked at her, tracing my thumb along her hand. "You don't have to deserve it," I replied. "You just have to remember it." She nodded, eyes glistening in the candlelight. For once, there were no walls, no pride, just two people who had loved, stumbled, and somehow found their way back to each other again. When we drove home that night, she held my hand the whole way. No more jokes, no teasing, just quiet warmth. The woman who had mocked me for forgetting now knew the truth. I hadn't forgotten. I'd been preparing something that would remind us both why we fell in love in the first place. And as we pulled into the driveway, she turned to me with a small, tearful smile and said, "You remembered everything." I looked at her, heart full, and whispered, "I never stopped."